Tim, thank you so much for coming back. I know we're going to go on to talk about your philosophy of death today, but I'd really like to start with the title of your new book, your new pod book, because for me that's so resonant and so related to what the Dark Night of the Soul is about. Can you give us the title and...
Yes, love to. Yeah, it's great to talk to you again, Fiona, as always. So it's a pod book, which is a cross between a book and a podcast. So chapters, but presented in a podcast format as video out on YouTube and audio on podcast providers, Audible, all those things. So it's an organized body of work, like a book is. And, it is philosophy. It's heavy duty philosophy. I mean, I've just released one today, and it's like really looking at what's the nature of the one that becomes everything. Now, it's heavy ontology, but I wanted to make it clear right from the start that the purpose of having a good, robust, foundational philosophy is that it supports the higher levels. And the higher levels are about, we're human beings. Do our lives count for anything? And one of the issues that we're facing in the modern world is that what I call a soul crisis in my book, Soul Story, or people have called it the meaning crisis, that there's a growing view that life is essentially meaningless. We're here for long enough to go, what the heck's this? And then we're gone, and that's it. So that we can find meaning perhaps in important things like our families and our relationships and our jobs. But if we take a moment and just stand back from that, there's a feeling of, well, yeah, okay, it's significant sort of for now, but in terms of the great scope of things, our lives count for nothing. There's 9 billion of us or whatever it is now. We don't matter. And my intuition and what the philosophy is there to support in an intellectually robust way is, no, I think they really do matter. I think every single individual life really matters. And part of that really mattering is the subject matter of what you suggested we could return to talk about, which is death. Because if death is the end, which is a common growing view, I would say at the moment, then it's really quite difficult, I think, to sustain the idea that in the larger sense, the more cosmic sense, that your life matters. And certainly that must be true of those really awful tragedies where there's some young child who's got an awful disease, lives for a very short while, suffers during that period, and then dies. And it's like, well, you were saying that matters? Or is it just people who have a happy life or a good life, their life matters? It's like all of those issues are important to me. So this philosophy is about really affirming human life. And that's why I've called it Why Your Life Really Matters.
My experience has been on occasion of having a deep experience of that mattering. And I think there's something really important in the word matter itself, that we are matter as well as mattering. And the coming into our materiality, our matter on that level, for me, has pointed the way to this wider mattering that you're talking about. I mean, I haven't articulated my experiences philosophically, but seeing the degree of my own mattering simultaneously was a seeing of the depth of mattering of all of us. As you said, that every single life, whatever its nature or duration, deeply, deeply matters. And I think that's, as you said, when we're in a place where there is a lot of nihilism, I think that's an incredibly important message. And I think it's one of the fundamental things that we're faced with in the Dark Night is a facing of the futility of our existence. That there's a deep sense of not just what's the point of all of this, but also what's the point of me?
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So yeah, the matter, the world is matter. It comes from the same root as mother, of course. It's like, and that's important. With this this philosophy of evolutionary emergence that I've been articulating, for me, it's like, look, every level matters because it's all one thing. And I've been doing a chapter for the pod book just recently about quantum physics. And you go down to that level, and it's not matter, it's before matter, and it's possibilities, it's mathematical. And then you get matter. Oh, that's amazing. Now you've got physicality. But then from physicality is going to come the psyche, which isn't physical again. Now we're into images. Well, do we have to go one of those matters more than the other? I don't think so. I think they all matter because it's all one thing. And we are, what defines us as human beings is we're psychobiological systems. We function on the level of biology and on the level of the psyche or soul. And that's what we need to understand if we're going to see why our individual lives matter. And then the other element, which is kind of jumping, but it will come up inevitably when we talk about death, is a lot of it depends on, what do you mean by you? When you say, and there's a lot of, you've got on the one hand, I come across a lot of people who are physicalists in some way who go, well, you're just a body and that's it. So get used to it. And that can lead to a sense of awful darkness because it doesn't look good for bodies, does it? It looks like they're going to really suffer and then they're going to die. And when you get older, you've seen that happen to so many people, it's going to happen to you. And on the other hand, I hear a lot of people in the spiritual community going, oh, you're not really that at all. You're really the presence of this abstract thing called consciousness. And both of us have been around those sort of views and a complete denial of the self. And what I'm presenting is a completely different theory of identity. And that theory of identity comes from, can I go, it'll take a few minutes.
Please, yeah.
Okay. So everything that I'm exploring, the reason I'm excited by it, Fiona, and why I think it's worth spending these hours and days and months and years that I have on it, is that it all fits together. And that feels important because like any structure, it means everything's supporting everything else. So my basic ontology, my theory of what this is we're in, is it's a process of evolutionary emergence. It's the realization of ever more emergent possibilities in every moment. Here's one now. It's never happened before, but it's based on what happened before the past. So it's a process. So the theory of identity that I'm exploring is, well, that's what I am then. It's what you are. We're processes. We treat each other as if we're kind of objects in the world, but we're not. We're processes in time. And like a process is made of its past. That's what it is. And my whole theory of the universe would be this moment here is a reworking of the last moment in a new way. So implicitly, it contains everything that's ever happened. This moment contains implicitly all the information that's ever happened all the way from the beginning. And that's what makes it what it is. So the possibility that this could be anything is conditioned by the past. And that's what I call pastivity. So then you apply that to you and me. And you go, oh, well, that's what I am. Who is Tim? Tim is everything that's ever happened to Tim. Tim is his past. He's every relationship that he's ever had with everything in the universe, internally and externally. And everything that has formed in that process, whether it's the universe generally or just Tim, hasn't gone anywhere. It's all implicit in the moment. So what you're then saying, and this will obviously affect how we approach death in a minute, but right now, in terms of like the meaning and value, what it says to me is nothing is lost. Nothing. So when people look at their life and they go, oh, it was failure and this, and I did that, and that didn't work out, and my marriage failed, and, my kids won't speak to me, and da-da-da-da, and I invested all that time in that project, and it didn't go anywhere. It's like, yeah, okay, that's sad. It's just, we all have that, but it is sad. There's no getting away from that. But none of it's wasted. It all made you who you are because you're made of your past. So I find myself, I have this fantasy, if I ever get asked to go back to my university and give one of those talks that people give as an old man going, what would you say to the young people? My message, I think, would be, hey, guys, follow your dreams, standard message, follow your dreams, and, you'll probably fail. Based from what I've seen, most people who do that fail. But it will create who you are in the process. And that's what's really important. because who you are is everything you've done and tried to do and thought and every relationship. So none of it's wasted. And that's kind of feels like that touches the dark places I've been to in that kind of dark night thing, where it feels like everything's futile. It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Everything is creating who you are.
I think the word liberating comes to mind, actually. I think that that's such a shift from our usual view in this culture, and I mean that in a broad sense. Our usual view of ourselves as objects, as fixed object, which has to have things done to it and be tinkered with and whatever. To see ourselves as you say, process or movement allows much more of a sense of fluidity then, rather than having this very fixed, rigidly held identity that says, this is what I am and is strictly defined. I think that idea of ourselves as process has a dynamism built into it that allows then greater change. Everything that's previously happened as implicit is not to fix things in any particular way. I mean, obviously, I think there's a way in which all of that plays through us, given our physicality and our position in the community and all of that. But all of that is also comes from the past. And that kind of fluidity, that dynamism, that coming back to a word we used a lot last time, the fact that we are evolving in a way that doesn't separate us out from the rest of the universe in that sense, I think then allows us greater scope for change. And we were saying last time, the dark night experience is a transformative experience. I think that sense of that this ontology is of us as process then ties in with the idea of being something which has an inherent ability to transform. It isn't that we're changing a fixed solid something into a fixed solid something else.
Absolutely, yeah. Because it's not just that we're process. For me, it's that we're a process of evolutionary emergence. Everything is. And if you look at your life, anyone listening to this, look at your life. Have you not been through a process of evolutionary emergence? Because nearly everyone has. And if you haven't, it's really, it's sad, because this is the opportunity we all have. And what I love about seeing that, and by evolutionary emergence, I just mean that the present is building on what's been before, and it can lead to radical newness, radical creativity, radical novelty. And if you engage with it, my 60s have been more full of that than any other period of my life. It just blown me away. And what it does that I like a lot is it undercuts cynicism and naivety, both. Because it undercuts the cynicism of, oh, well, that's just what I'm like, or that's what that other person, they're just like that. It's like, no, humanity is evolving. Oh, look at human beings, they're so awful. Well, yeah, but if you see how far we've evolved, if you see what we were like just 100 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago, you can't miss the fact that we have really, really evolved. And so it undercuts that cynicism, but also the naivety, which just goes, but we're all perfect already, and we're great, and we're wonderful. It's like, no, we're really not. We carry the past within us. Collectively, you can see that, and individually. And one of the things that can happen in those dark periods is you discover your own dark past, whether it's something traumatic or whether it's something which is just from the deep roots of the human psyche, which you think, oh, God, is that really in me? And it is. And so the evolutionary process is also one of transformation, so that you're going, oh, I have to be able to transform that. And we do it individually. That's what spirituality has been about. It's been about empowering us to transform ourselves. So all of that comes from, I think, that view of identity as being evolutionary and can go anywhere, absolutely anywhere. And who knows collectively where we're heading.
Yes, where does this bring us in relation to death?
Mm.
Because for me, inherent in the Dark Knight is some kind of reckoning with our mortality and with death itself. For me personally, that came about as a very strong sense for quite a long time that I simply wouldn't survive the Dark Knight, that the intensity of the pain made it unsurvivable. Other people, I tend to find that people are on one side of the same coin or the other. Either there's a terror of death or a desire for death.
Ooh.
So I think either way, obviously, there is some kind of reckoning with our mortality. And there are moments within that I think of. Certainly for me, there were moments in which there did seem to be some kind of grasping of the wider picture of death. But I think without a philosophy to underpin that, it's easy for it to slip out of our fingers. So I think there can be insight in seeing and realization that the death of the physical isn't the end. And yet I think that's hard to hold on to when we live in a culture that has a very strange relationship with death.
Yep. Yeah. I'm having a line from Walt Whitman, American poet, is floating into my imagination where he says, death is different to what one supposes and luckier, which always makes me smile whenever I think about it. Death is different to what one supposes and luckier. This whole philosophy, which has been brewing since my parents died, whatever it is, 13 something years ago, came from the experience of being with them, the profound intuition that death wasn't the end. I've worked with people who were dying when I was younger as well. I had that then. And a feeling that I needed to be able to have a robust understanding that could account for that intuition in a way that fitted with everything I knew about modern science, because it didn't seem to fit. And the old mythic understanding from spirituality just didn't seem good enough. So it felt like, well, one of these has got to give. And what I was seeing really amongst a lot of my friends as well was that they were hitting the same problem. And what was giving was any sense of, no, anyone who believes that there's anything after death, well, it's just wishful thinking, and you need to be strong enough to face the truth. And my feeling was that wasn't right. So, I mean, the first thing for me is that I'm not in the business of proving life after death or anything like that. My pod book doesn't do that. That's not my speciality. What I can do is go, well, okay, for me, it's primarily in intuition, but the evidence that convinces me that I'm not completely nuts comes from the huge number of accounts of near-death experiences we have now, and the quality of those accounts, and the fact that we've got them in extreme medical conditions where the person has been absolutely brain dead. And they're coming back and telling not just amazing stories, but stories which resonate between the different stories. Not just like, oh, what was your crazy dream? If I share with my dream last night with you, probably we'll go, wow, mine was completely different. This happened. But these people are having things which are resonant with each other happen. And the estimates, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And so that seems interesting. And then the other one for me, Fiona, is terminal lucidity, which is one that people are less familiar with, but is also incredibly well documented and utterly fascinating. So terminal lucidity is when their brain is so damaged, they've got Alzheimer's or dementia, that they can't recognize their family. They've been like it for months, sometimes years. It's very sad. And then literally before they die, shortly before, they become completely lucid. They recognize everyone, they pass messages to people, and they die. I mean, not literally in the moments afterwards, although it does happen, but, within a day. And again, it's very well documented and can't possibly make sense. just as the NDE, this huge experience that people are clearly having when they are brain dead, can't be explained. So likewise, somebody who has lost all their memory completely, it seems, and whose brain is not functioning, suddenly is completely lucid. What the hell's that? So what I've been doing is trying to develop a way of understanding this, and it is radically different, that works for me, and that's what we can get into.
Yes, please. Let's get into that.
Okay, so here's the essential vision, which is very simple, very, very simple, which goes, okay, so you and I, we're psychobiological systems. What does that mean? It means we're systems, we're made of the past, that's what's governing our pastivity. You know, the reason I speak with this accent is because of my pastivity, my past. The reason I have all the characteristics I've got, what I know this but not that, is all the things, it's all my past. Everything is conditioning what I am right now. In a creative way, but it is. And that pastivity system is on these two levels, which I'm experiencing as two distinct worlds. One is the world I'm experiencing with my biological senses, listening, looking, it's the physical world. And then, so that's where I'm looking at you and I'm seeing everything around me. And then I'm experiencing the psyche or the soul. The word psyche and soul are the same word, different languages. And on that level, I'm experiencing images. So that's where I'm understanding the meanings of the words you speak to me, for instance. I hear them with my ear, and then I understand what they mean on the level of the psyche or the soul. That's where I dream. That's where I fantasize. That's where I can go on shamanic journeys. That's where I can take hallucinogenics, psychedelics. That's where there's a whole domain. And the whole of the esoteric philosophy has always been about helping people explore that shamanic domain. And we're experiencing both of them all of the time. All of the time. Apart from when we sleep, when we don't consciously experience the body, it's just unconscious. But we just experience the imaginal. And what happens? Well, not always, but sometimes the imaginal becomes very, very vivid. So if I imagine an apple now, it's kind of a bit vague. But if I was asleep, it might be so real, I think I'm actually eating an apple. Why? Because my focus of my processing is in the imaginal world only. Okay, so you're experiencing these two things right now. The essence of what I want to suggest is when the biological part of the system fails, you will not experience the senses, but you will just carry on experiencing the imaginal. I mean, that's the essential thing that I know I want to say how I think that's possible, but that's it. That's essentially what I'm saying. It's like, well, look, you're already experiencing it. And what I hear with people who are having near-death experiences is, they don't experience the body, but the imaginal becomes super vivid, and they enter into the ecology of soul. That just as we live in an ecology, a biological ecology, interacting with other biological entities. I'm doing it right now with you. The same thing happens in the level of soul. And so what they're experiencing is a collective level of the psyche. And that becomes super vivid. And they have all of those classic near-death experiences. So one of them is remembering what they call the life review, seeing the whole of their life, everything that's ever happened to them. Well, I've just suggested that's who they are. They're just seeing who they are. Oh, that's me. And evaluating who they've been. That whole journey, for instance. And then there's many other experiences. But that's the essential idea. Now, I'll go into how I think that's possible, but I'll let that land with you first.
Yes. So philosophically speaking, then the first question that comes to me is, where does that leave us with the problem of consciousness? Because this does lead us back to what we think is, where we think psyche is being produced or originates from. If we think it's purely a function of the brain, which is what physicalists would say, isn't it? That all of this amazing imaginal psyche soul activity is merely a brain function, then that gives us a problem, doesn't it? So if the brain dies, that theory would go, all of that stops. So where does that leave us in terms of where psyche is being created, or where it originates? Or
Yeah, great question. So I've suggested that the whole universe is a process of, it's like an AI system that's learning. It's not an AI system. It's a universe, but it's like that. And that the pastivity, the past, accumulates. It doesn't pass, it accumulates. And that's the information that's arisen already. And then that information informs the new process of forming. That's the mechanism by which everything has arisen, and why there's always more. Every moment is more, which is why we've gone from hydrogen 14 billion years ago to you and me having this conversation. What's running that is the pastivity system. It's like the hard disk of the universe, if we use that analogy. So the hard disk of the universe is the past. That's where everything is being run from. What we see in the moment is like the screen. It's like what it's doing. So what's running the body? Well, the past, the pastivity. What's running the psyche? The past, the pastivity. It's the whole system that's running everything. And the system is not, it's completely dispensing with this strange idea, actually, now it seems to me, that all that exists is the present moment. And going, no, that's not all that exists. All that exists is everything that's ever formed. It's just that the present moment is where it's forming, where it becomes something new. That's what the present moment is. And so the system is being run by the hard disk. Now, so then you get a different view of it. So then I'm going to use an analogy here, because we are able to see each other, even though we're only recording in audio for the podcast. We can see each other because we're on Zoom, and we're able to. I can see you and I can hear you. So how's that working? Well, that's because I've got a Zoom program on my hard disk. Can I see it? No. What I see is what it does. I don't see all the stuff that's going on, vast complexity behind the scenes. I just see what it does. And what it does is it enables me to, you to see me to see you, I can hear you, you can hear me. Now, if, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if in a moment I was talking and then suddenly you could see me, but you couldn't hear me, and you could see my lips moving and you couldn't hear me, you wouldn't go, I'm guessing, oh my God, that's impossible. How can I see Tim but not hear him? It's like he's functioning on the level of visuals without the level of audio, but they come together. They happen together. That's impossible. How could you have one without the other? But you wouldn't do that because you would recognize, oh, the audio bit of the program's not working anymore, but the visual bit is still working. Well, what I'm suggesting is something, as an analogy, be careful with it, but what I'm suggesting is something like that. Look, you are the pastivity system, Fiona. You're functioning on two levels. It's conditioned by all of this past, not just your own, but the collective past, the whole evolutionary process that's got you there. And this system has reached the place where the level which is governing the imaginal, the ideational, can continue when the other fails. And the hard disk, the process continues. So what I'm saying is, look, when we die, we don't go somewhere and we don't become something else. We just continue. It just carries on, just without the biological bit, because that's failed now. A bit like if you're watching me talking and you could hear me but not see me, or see me and not hear me. It's like, that bit of the system's failed. But we carry on.
I'm not sure, for me, that then answers this question around consciousness and
Okay. Yeah.
where the imaginal is generated from. I
It's
mean, we know that there's some interplay when we're alive
definitely.
within the brain. I mean, we've mentioned, dementia already, and we've seen firsthand the effects of that. So where does that leave us in terms of the relationship between the biological and the imaginal,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that changes post-death? Because if we have any, it seems to me that if we have any notion that the imaginal is the creation of the biological, or that psyche comes out of soma, then there's a hurdle there. We have to Yes. What would you say about the relationship between those two and
Okay.
in their
So the reason
forming?
I did it in that way first was because I think it's so important. It's because what I'm inviting is a radical shift. So even with your body is made up of whatever it is, trillion cells. But the last time I met you in person, nearly every one of those cells was different. So you're a completely different body, but you're not. So what's that about? It's about the fact that you're an information system and cells come and go. That's what you are. So the pastivity is organizing cells, which are themselves information systems on a lower level of emergence, which are coming and going, and which is why you eat every day, to maintain the flow through of information from you as an information system. So my theory of consciousness is that consciousness is high definition processing. So biological systems have learnt to read their environment and pay attention to what matters. So that what's happened in the evolutionary process is the systems have learned to focus on things that matter and process that in high definition, and we get this. The rest, nearly everything actually, we process in low definition. We don't, and we're unconscious. Then at a certain point, those systems have turned that ability to process in high definition on themselves. So the whole way through, they have been processing. Where? On the hard disk, in the pastivity. That's still going on. That's still what's happening. But now it can turn attention to that. So memory, for instance, just done a chapter on this. The idea that memories are in the brain, I think is completely wrong. I think what's happening is we are paying attention to the past because the past is there. So, and that's been happening the whole way through unconsciously, still is. It's happening now. How do I know what noises to make? How do I know what they mean? Huge amount of reference always to the past. Everything is referencing the organisational systems of pastivity. Now I have the ability to focus on it. I'm focusing on it now, which is why memory is so bad, because you focus on it with your current ideas to make sense, to try and work it out. What was the past? Just like so you're limited, but that's what we're doing. So it's not in the brain. That's why terminal lucidity happens. That's why people can remember when they're dead. It's because it's nothing to do with what's in the brain. So for me, the brain, which is obviously immense and important, is a biological level of processing, which allows us to live these incredibly complex instinctual lives. From that has evolved an ideational or imaginal level of processing that is not physical. The universe is not physical. We mentioned quantum physics. It's not a physical universe. It's an informational universe. So we now get we've got matter as a level of information. We now get another level of information, which is imaginal or ideational. That's the psyche or the soul. It's emerged from it, but it's not the same as it. And then what's happening? Well, the brain is now acting like a interface because it's one system. We're one system right now. So, which means, thank goodness, because it means I can intend to say this and my mouth moves. But likewise, if you hit me on the head with a hammer, I'll probably pass out because there are two systems. When the biological system fails, then we're not two systems anymore. Then that system falls away and the other system can continue because it's never been in the body or the brain. It's another level of emergence. And that level of emergence is functioning in the same way that everything is, as an informational system playing out the patterns of the past.
So I have a question which I think is related to this. I think many people would conceive of us as having a life force. And that what happens when we die is that the life force somehow stops or leaves us in some way. Do you think that life force is just another way of saying psyche and soul, or would you see that as something different?
I think I think actually people can use ideas in any way they like, and I don't want to have a down on that, but I think it's an incoherent old idea. I don't think that we need to think in terms of life forces or anything. I think we're in an evolutionary process. We've evolved onto these levels. One level carries on, and and we can approach it. Now, obviously, that's just the beginning of an understanding. But what it's saying is, look, it's not there's some life force that's magic or that our soul is already immortal. It's that, like everything, the ability of the psyche to survive the death of the body has evolved. And we shouldn't be surprised with that. It's like human beings evolved from fish, for heaven's sake. It's like, let's cease to be surprised. So is it really that
Yeah.
big a deal to go, yeah, and the psyche? So the whole time, since life began, every living form has been doing its best not to die. Should it surprise us that in the evolutionary process, that a system worked out how to do that? But it did it by sustaining itself on a non-physical, non-biological level. Now, if the ancient traditions are right, which I think there's a lot of truth in the ancient traditions, we need to just understand it in a new way. It looks like that can happen for a bit, but that actually the system will need to reconnect with the biological system, and that's what's traditionally called reincarnation. That actually that cycle continues because you haven't gone anywhere. This is not off to somewhere else. It's not going home to where you fell from. None of that. It's going, no, that's the realm. That's the leading edge of the evolutionary process. And you experience it for a bit, and it maybe you can't hold on to that forever, and that you re-engage with the biological. That seems perfectly credible to me. But not in some sort of you're a little bubbly soul thing which pops into a body. No, it's going look, just in the same way that two systems on your computer can interrelate. Informational systems can come into a relationship with each other and become one system. Well, okay, there you go. That sounds like what's happening. So there's no rejection of the biological. There's no, it's no. I've said it. That it's all one thing. That's what I'm trying to get across there.
So that gives us the underpinnings of the philosophy. When you got to the point where all of that felt coherent to you, how did it feel? How does it feel?
Mm.
What does that give us?
Well, it gives me. I'm someone who, if I feel like my understanding is shaky, it can't hold up, it takes away my faith in it. And I don't mean faith in some blind sense. I mean my confidence in it, convidere, with faith. Yeah, I feel confident of this. Now, I completely believe in open systems, so everything's up for grabs, always. And I doubt everything all the time. And that's part of why I can be confident, because I push it like mad and it still stands up. But what it does for me is that it goes, that experience you're having, Tim, where you keep connecting with your dead mum? Follow that. Follow that. Because that's significant. And not just my dead mum. I wake up most nights and go through connecting with all of my dead family and friends, because I feel like I'm right next door to them, actually. And I've developed this a theory of sensing, which seems really important as well, which is going, look, so I sense the physical world with my eyes, I sense light, I sense the movement in the air with my ears, so on. How am I experiencing the imagination? How do I experience spiritual experiences? How do I experience that it's all one? How do I experience the vast loving intelligence, which is I do? And how can I experience a communication with my dead relatives, which I also do? And what I'm suggesting is that there is a psychic sense, or a psy-sense. Not a new idea, but what I'm saying is that is what the psyche is. It's another sense. But it's a way of sensing pastivity. It's a way of sensing imaginational level. And so potentially we can sense anything, which is why I can sense, something's just happened to my daughter, and I just know it. How do I know it? Because I'm psy-sensing it. But also, I can have a dream. I'm psy-sensing the images. I can have I can have a life review when I'm dead, and I'm psy-sensing it. So what happens, I think, is our psy-sense increases hugely. And it gives me the faith to follow that. Go, okay, let's really focus on that, because I think that's what the esoteric traditions I've been studying have always been about. It's like developing this latest sense.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a level on which, for me, the last number of years' work have been absolutely about that, about the sensing the intelligence inherent in the evolutionary unfolding, And, every time I've been sensing in that way. I've used the word sense. I sense that this is about, when I was 3 years old, or I sense that this is about
Yeah.
my mother, or whatever the material is. And that comes, as we've been saying, with imaginal information, images, thoughts that come in a different kind of way than normal. And
But,
obviously,
but, but Fiona, I would say it's not just thoughts that come in a different way, it's all thoughts.
yes, absolutely.
How do you hear yourself speaking imaginally? When you talk to yourself, how? What is it? So all of that, memory
Yeah.
is psy-sensing. How do you experience a memory? Because you're psy-sensing it, so that the system is reading the universe and itself.
So I think when we stop arbitrarily deciding the parameters of what we're sensing, that naturally opens up all of these other sense experiences that we have. That, as we were saying, we've sensed not only people in our lives who've died, but for me, certainly sensing connections from other lives, or connections from who knows where. And I think when we allow, if you like, the full range of sensing, we don't have to concretize any sort of beliefs around that. I don't think we need to necessarily build. I still have a very open sense about what I think around past lives. What I do know is that I've had those experiences many times and been with other people as they had them. So, yeah, I'm wondering if there is more to say about reincarnation. And as you said, the two systems, if you like, divide when we die, but then we come back and reconnect with the biological in some way.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot in what you've just said, Fiona, that's important, I think. One is that I think it's very important to have a completely open system about what you sense with biological senses, because we have plenty of
Absolutely.
examples where you're convinced that something's happened and it hasn't.
Yeah.
Famously, you can hide your hand next door to a plastic hand, and someone can smash the plastic hand with a hammer and you feel pain. So, we're easily deceived. So we need to know that about ourselves. The other thing about the psy-sensing is it is comparatively recent. It's still been around for a very long time, but it's comparative. And I suspect, by the way, I suspect this is also in animals. I don't think this is just human beings we're talking about. I think, this is in other emergent forms of life. And I suspect as we go forward, we'll see how important it is in the animal world once we start taking it more seriously. But it has evolved, and it's new. So, I think of the eye. The eye started as the ability to notice shadows. And for many, many animals, it's still black and white. And then we've got color. And then some animals have got incredible eyesight, much better than us. And I think it's like that with psy-sensing. So there's human beings who have got specific abilities. Like there's people who can remember everything that ever happened to them exactly. There's not many of them, like 60, I think, but they can remember everything, and they really can, or other similar things. So it shouldn't surprise us that it's a bit iffy for most of us. And we should be careful. It's like, well, am I psy-sensing that well or not? A bit like you can't see very well. Like when I haven't got my glasses on, it's like, what's that? I think it's a rope, or it might be a snake. I'm not really sure. It's like, all of that. So we need to be careful. We need to be wary, but we need to take it seriously, and we need to cultivate it. And and I'm with you, like with past lives. I have all sorts of stuff around it. I'm very open. I'm very careful. I've seen it abused a lot, where people have done the whole, I think we've met in a past life. You're falling under my spell. Now we're part of, you're going to come into my cult. It's like all of that stuff. No, not that. But I also think we should take it seriously. Again, the evidence there's surprisingly large amounts of evidence. And the answer I've got, which is only the beginnings of an understanding, is just to go, look, there's an established system. It was a psychobiological system. That's all in it. It hasn't gone. All that past of being biological hasn't disappeared. It's still what that person is. They're just now functioning on the level of the psyche. And that can come into a relationship with a newly emerging biological system that hasn't developed to the level of psyche yet, and the two can merge. And what would happen would be that the system would then become one system, and so it would have no access to its own past. It wouldn't be able to be conscious maybe at all. All of those abilities that it had are still in it, just can't function on that, can't do that now. And that's the idea of the forgetting. It's like, yeah, you just can't function on that level. But as you grow, you'll have moments where you go, hang on a minute. And especially, I mean, the evidence with reincarnation is overwhelmingly children under the age of 5, 7 maybe. Nearly all. Those are the really blow your mind ones, lots and lots. And then it passes, and then they move into the new life, and you're into those memories now. You can't psy-sense something which is that distant.
Yes. So just to bring this back to the dark night of the soul experience and that facing of mortality in whatever way we do during that phase, and obviously that facing of mortality continues in some way. What would you say to anybody who's in that at the moment, who is either terrified of dying or wanting to die?
Yeah. That was very clear when you said that. So for someone who's terrified of dying, my personal feeling is, but I mean, I have no magic knowledge. This is purely from being a Tim, having lived a life. That's all it is. And having looked at evidence and tried to get clear on how we can understand it without dismissing it, I would say overwhelmingly, it looks like it's an experience not to be feared. Now, the dying process itself, I think it's hard for any of us not to have a certain amount of intrepidation about that, to say the least. But it sounds like I said, what women? It's different to what you suppose and luckier. And that there's an immense, you come into a more emergent state. So for most people who have near-death experience, it is a blissful, beautiful experience, reconnecting with other souls that you already connected with, but now vividly, connecting with a being of light, the vast loving intelligence, which is like a real, if you do that while you're alive, it's blow your mind, but it sounds amazing when you're not held back, as it were, down with biological and material pastivity. You're able to. So that sounds pretty good. Although, and this is a little aside, but I'm going to make it because it feels important. It feels pretty good now. What intrigues me is that if what I'm saying has any validity to it, then the after-death state itself has evolved. So if you look at the early accounts, and when people go, it's just wishful thinking, it doesn't sound like wishful thinking. What people are describing is not that nice. They're describing surviving, but it's a land of shades, and it's all a bit bleak. That's what people describe in the Greek tradition, in the Jewish tradition. Hades is like the underworld. It's not, you don't want to go there. But as it develops, it evolves. So it becomes a religious place, and it's full of religious things. Because why? Because that's what's happening to the human psyche. And now you get these beautiful, beautiful, multicultural, sublime vistas and gardens and God knows what, because that's where we're at. So now I think it's luckier than we think. Now, the other side. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a big hero of mine when I was very young, who was the woman who worked with the dying. She came up with the stages of grief, and she was the person who first noticed the near-death experience. Because she was around a lot of people who were dying, and they told her all these stories, and it blew her away. But she wasn't the first person to publish. And the reason she didn't publish to begin with is because she was so frightened that she would set off a string of suicides. Because what she was finding was so good that she just thought, I can't publish this. I need to know what happens to people who commit suicide before I can publish this. And she did. Because what she, and I think the key to it, it's a complex question, but the key to it was the life review. Because what people described in the life review was not just seeing their life, it was seeing the effects of their life on others. And what she saw with that with people who'd had near-death experiences from suicide and so forth was you don't want to cause that pain to everyone. You really don't. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with going, I've had enough. Of course, it's fine. But you really don't want to do that to everyone else. If you can possibly avoid it, hang on in there. Life can recover and start making sense again. And you'll be really glad you did. And I think that's the other side of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim, so much. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and philosophical understanding.
It's been a real pleasure to connect for both of these podcast discussions, Fiona. It's lovely, really great.
Thank you.